And
full screen.
There we go. Okay, so I can only see this. So you're the one that has to be in charge of this, of the chat. And you'll see when people come on. So, oh no, that's not good. Let's just pray that that doesn't happen again. So you'll be responsible for communicating with people that are in, and you're the one person that's allowed to interrupt me. So if there's people that have questions, I might ask you if people have questions, but you can, if there's somebody that has an urgent question or somebody's not seeing something, then you can interrupt me and ask, okay?
Okay. Currently, there are already 5 attendees in the room.
Okay, great.
Okay. I'll just mute my mic.
Great. All right, for those of you who are already on board, then we are starting in about 5 minutes. We'll start right on time at 5:30. I'm super excited that you're here. Hello and welcome to Finding Your Wizard's Power, an introduction to practical magic for entrepreneurs. Now, I want to welcome each of you individually, either if you're listening live, and if you are, there's an opportunity to chat and to ask questions in the chat window. And I encourage you to do so as I present the material, because sometimes there are, in fact, questions about magic, because it's something that is unusual. And you'll be seeing my slides for the presentation instead of my face. However, if you want to see my face, there's a couple of slides that have my face in it, and I'll probably turn the slides off toward the end and as I answer the questions. But I wanted to let you know how to tell if you're in the right place. So magic is really useful for you if all the parts of your business and your life are working individually, but something is still not quite right when you look at the whole. Magic and the way that I teach magic are really useful when things on the surface seem like they should be working, but they're not. Another way that you can tell is if you're stuck at a level or blocked with some specific thing and you can't get past that block, whatever is keeping you there, because magic can unlock the blocks. Another way to tell that you're in the right place is that if somebody else seems to be holding the keys to your success and maybe even your life, this is a really common feeling. And it's a feeling that, okay, there is some secret out there and I just don't know what it is. But there's something else or someone else in control. And finally, from what you can tell, you're doing all the right things, but you just can't make some parts of your business and your life work. And finally, of course, you want magic, like you want some magic in your life. And we're talking, I'll be more specific about the kind of magic that we're talking about, as we get further into the call. And we've only got about an hour today, and I'm going to try and leave some time at the end for your questions. And I'm going to also let you know how you can qualify for a complimentary strategy session with me, and give you the address to go do that. Because ultimately, I want you to know as much about magic as possible, and I can't teach you everything that I know on a single webinar. So there's going to be a way for you to connect with something bigger at the end of the call if you'd like to do that. So welcome. You might be wondering, what's all this magic business about anyway? I've done fine in my life so far without magic, and there's no guarantee that magic will get me what I want any faster than I can already get it. Or you might be thinking, well, who is this sage guy? Some of you actually already know me, and they're probably still saying, who is this sage guy? And why should I want to listen to him about magic? Well, I'll explain all of that, right? I promise I'll get to all of that. But I want to just start with a reminder. There's me, by the way. I want to start with a reminder that we are actually wanting to work at a level beyond the mundane. Now, this is an actual picture. It's not a faked or photoshopped picture. It's a picture of bioluminescent algae in the water. And it's actually beyond the mundane. It's something magical that happens in the real world, right? And I'm using this to remind you that the essential thing that you need to know about running your business is not about business at all, right? There is a third level, right? There is business training. Most people know they need some business training. Then there is what we call inner game stuff, and there's a famous guy named Tim Galway who wrote a book called The Inner Game of Tennis, which was the first inner game book that was written. And that inner game book sort of defined what we meant by you know, the stuff that's invisible to us as business people, but visible to our unconscious minds. But magic actually is the third rail there. It's something that goes beyond business training and beyond the inner game. Now, there is this quality of magic that people can understand from Penn and Teller and from the, you know, Chris Angel and the magic shows that are out there. And most of that magic, or hand magic, is called legerdemain. And legerdemain is like sleight of hand. It's the stuff that people do that that is essentially tricking you. You know, they're using a large gesture to hide a small gesture, and the large gesture is unimportant, it's showy. The small gesture is where the actual thing is happening, and they're hiding that from you, right? It's a trick. You know, that's why they call it a trick, because they're misguiding you. Well, the kind of magic that we're doing is not that kind of magic at all. So I'm going to start with a quote, or continue, because we started long ago, right? I'm going to continue with a quote from Arthur C. Clarke. And this is Clarke's third law, and his other two laws are sort of equally profound and silly at the same time. And he says that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And this law got quoted a lot in the days of early iPhone technology and other handheld device technology, where it just seemed like, wow, this is we can't figure out how this works. My device is communicating or knowing things that I don't know and is telling me. Now, sometimes this is really disappointing, because if you have an experience with Siri, you know, she never does what I want her to. But if we take this quote at its face value and we say, okay, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And we say, we remember the rules of high school grammar, and we say any sentence that has is in it, which is, I don't know why I remember this, but is a transitive verb. And anything on either side of a transitive verb can be reversed. So what we can say is we just switch the subject and the object of the sentence around, the subject and the predicate. And we can say magic is indistinguishable from any sufficiently advanced technology. And we've not changed any of the words in this sentence. We've just changed the order of them. Magic is indistinguishable from any sufficiently advanced technology. And we do that because our subject is magic. So in addition to this, we can say, okay, well, if something is indistinguishable, like if our senses can't detect the difference between the two things, then they are, for all intents and purposes, the same thing. So if we just take the indistinguishable part out, then we get magic is advanced technology. Magic is advanced technology. Isn't that cool? So I'm going to spend the next few minutes, and by the end of this, I think you'll agree with me that the technology is indeed very powerful. Now, and that's if we know where to look for the magic and actually what magic really means. So I want to define magic, and I want to define magical tools and what they mean. And finally, I want to say what I think a wizard is, because it's no surprise to you by now that I have a school for wizards, right? So I would like to say that I think you are a wizard. And you might be going, well, who, me? And some of you are like, well, yeah, I'm a wizard. Others might be going, well, I don't know, you know, I'll feel like a wizard. Like, what's a wizard? And I'm going to tell you what a wizard is, and then you'll maybe agree with me that if you aren't one, that you could possibly be one. So before that, I want to tell you a little bit about me, because I feel like it's only fair that you know a little something about me. And I've got a lot to teach you about magic and wizardry. But I want to start like really way early on, because one of the things that's true about me is that I'm a maker of things. Ever since I was like 3 years old, I have made things, and some of these things were practical, and some of them were impractical, at least on the surface, right? As I like to say, creativity is one of the primary reasons that we exist on the planet. Now, that's an odd thing to say, isn't it? I'll say it again. Creativity is one of the primary reasons we exist on the planet. Now, when I was a kid, I drew things on paper, like I cut things out of paper and I sculpted things with paper mache. Like sometimes they were scary things that frightened the other kids. Sometimes they were beautiful things. You know, I had no filter, right? I drew a giant mural on my wall when I was a teenager, and little did I know that all this creativity was preparing me for an apprenticeship in wizardry. Now, my parents, frankly, didn't know what to do with me because I was this Energizer bunny of creating things. And I didn't have enough allowance money because my parents were, you know, they were middle class and they both worked and they had these technical jobs, and they weren't white collar professionals. They had to scrimp and save, right? And they didn't have the money, and I didn't have the money from my allowance to order these big black light posters for my room. There was these little catalogs that had black light posters in them. So what I did was I took the tiny little drawings of the black light posters, and I had this little set of black light tempera paints that I got for $1.99, you know, and I created my own. I drew them and I painted them, and found my own Okay, I'm gonna do a little change here. There we go. Now I'm hoping that you can now see my screen. And all right, here we go. Thank you, Gifford, for letting me know that I was not presenting to everyone. And I think that at this point we'll be able to see them. So Gifford will let me know if you can now see the screen. Okay. Now you should be seeing a picture of me, not me flapping my lips, but a picture of me with my windblown hair. So if you can see that, like, let Gifford know in the sharing, and I'll if not, then I'll make it change again. So I was just saying how, like, okay, I had this need or want, a desire to have these blacklight posters, and I didn't have the money to get them. So I just figured out a way to create them for myself. Now, I want you to get the principle of this, because you don't actually have to be an artist, right, of any kind, to go through this process of being a wizard, or even a maker of any kind. All you need to do is just keep an open mind about how creatively you show up in the world, right? I want to tell you a little bit more. Okay, looks like people still can't see the screen. I'm going to try doing that. I am screen sharing and presenting to everyone. Whoa, that's funny. I'm going to go back to the preview. So I'm going to depend on Gifford to let me know whether or not you can see my screen now. So I want to tell you a little story. It's about an archetypal journey, right? And this is about a story in a house. Now, I've been studying magic and ritual and creative intelligence for over 30 years. And I've done things like manifested a home. I'll tell you about that in a second. I manifested a home while I was on medical disability. Like I'm talking about not just a rental, but a purchase of a home. And I've manifested friends and lovers and new jobs and money all my life. But I didn't always know what was causing this to happen. So I started studying magic because I wanted to find out what was working and why. Like, why was this working for me and wasn't working for other people, right? So in my late 20s, I made this pronouncement that I was going to be a homeowner by the time I was 30. And it was in the late 80s. It sort of gives you an idea about how old I am. And this was a time during which home prices were such that a 20-something couldn't really dream of owning a house. I had several of my friends say, well, we're just a generation who will never be homeowners because the prices just seemed too outrageous. Now, my parents were in no position to finance me, and I was unstoppable, though. I called the real estate agent, who's the mother of a friend of mine, and I had her show me houses, and she showed me some houses, and then she did some math, and she then called me up and said, you don't have enough money to own a house. And my response, I just said, that's okay. Let's just look at some houses anyway. And I'm sure that she thought I was nuts, right? And then through, you might say chance, or you might say manifestation, I came into a lot of money quite by accident. Now, if you want to know the story of that, I'm not going to tell you that on this webinar because it will take too long to tell you, but you can listen to my TED Talk, right? All you need to do is Google My Vertical Gift TEDx. The talk is only 6 minutes long, and it will definitely inspire you. So I, to follow along with the story, I was starting to get curious about why I was able to do these things, and noticed that there was this kind of model making that was occurring, and this is the basis for all magic, and I'll tell you more about that when we start to talk about correspondences. I also want to let you know that for the next 3 weeks I'm doing, or the next 6 weeks, I'm doing a webinar every 2 weeks that will focus on a different area of magic, because I realized that I couldn't tell you everything at once. So I need to give you this, set of tools, one webinar at a time. So if you want to attend all 3 of them, they're happening every 2 weeks, and they're happening on Tuesdays at 5:30. And I would love to have you, because what I'm going to try to do is teach you as much as I can about magic, because I want you to have access to magic whether or not you come to the School for Wizards. So let me give you a couple of definitions. I told you I would give you a definition for wizard and of magic, and I'm going to do that right now. So a wizard is a person of either gender. Yes, ladies, you can be a wizard, and you are. And this is a person of either gender who is living their life the way life was designed to be lived. That's a really important phrase, the way life was designed to be lived. I postulate that we have no idea in today's modern world how life was designed to be lived. And a wizard lives that with a balanced feeling of power, and with the knowledge and skills to do things that others might think impossible. Now, what I like to say is I teach people to do the impossible, but I don't really teach people how to do the impossible. I just teach people how to behave in such a way and how to live their life in such a way that it seems like they're doing the impossible, but they're still following the rules of the universe, right? Now, that is actually further elucidated in my definition of magic, which is a set of tools and techniques that wizards can use to influence probability in the direction of what they desire. Now that's the definition, and the sort of add-on to this that I felt like I needed to add is when wizards do this effectively, it can seem like they're doing the impossible, but wizards are living by the same universal laws as everyone else. Let's go back to that original definition though. A set of tools and techniques that wizards can use to influence probability in the direction of what they desire. So this is a really odd thing. There is a probability that you will receive a check for $64 million in the mail. Now that probability is very, very, very low. So the amount of magic that you would have to do in order to make that happen is a lot of magic. But let's just say that you are interviewing for a job and you really want this job and you're qualified for the job, but there are lots of other candidates for the job. Or you're having a conversation with a potential affiliate partner and you want to be sure that they will promote for you, and you want to do this fun thing with them and you want to make sure that they do it. Well, there is a probability that that will happen too, and the probability is higher. So what magic does is it increases the probability in the direction of what you desire. Isn't this cool? Now, you cannot map the invisible world directly, right? So when we're dealing with probabilities and desires and those kinds of things, you're dealing with a world that we cannot see, right? And the magic is science, right? But it's the science of the unseen. Now, this is this brings me to what they used to call it, and I've not yet found, I'm going to say never, but I've not yet found a word for this that works better. But it is called occult science, because occult just means hidden. It's that which is hidden from us. And I actually do a lot of work with science, and I get Scientific American. I used to get Science Weekly, which is a sort of publication for scientists to let them know what the latest discoveries are, you know, for people that are interested in science. And what I do is I devour these magazines, and I devour them because I'm always looking for scientific discoveries that are matching what metaphysical and occult science has been saying for years. And I'm going to show you one of these in just a second, right? You can't map it directly. It's called the invisible world. That is going to lead us directly to correspondences, which is what we're going to talk about. I was talking to somebody earlier today, and they were like, what are correspondences? So this is where you find out where correspondences are. So fractals. Fractals are an accepted scientific thing, right? And I want to just say that fractals are defined as self-similarity regardless of scale. Now, there's a really complicated definition of fractals, but I'm just giving you the simplest one, right? Self-similarity regardless of scale. So what it essentially means is that if you're looking at Google Maps and you're zoomed in to a coastline, you know, like there's New England, and then you zoom back, you know, like you just do the little magnifying glass and go, whoop, right? Then the coastline looks similar at different scales, right? Looks different at different, it looks the same at different scales. Sorry, I'm having my computer reprinted things. So I just printed a lot of material in the middle of what I was talking about that was the same as what we just talked about. So this actually relates to a notion in metaphysical science, which is called as above, so below. Or let me just be very specific. it is that which is above is similar to that which is below, right? Now, it's shortened to as above, so below, but the original language actually more closely echoes the language that's used by science to define fractals. It's self-similarity, not self-sameness. That which is above is similar to that which is below, right? So stay tuned for the next Wizard webinar where I'm going to teach you the 5 paths that you could study in the School for Wizards, right? That would be manifestation and spells and incantations and rituals and something mysterious called correspondences. And this mysterious thing called correspondences is what we're going to talk about today. They seem strange until you remember that which is below is similar to that which is above. And that which is above is similar to that which is below. There's a correspondence, you see, between above and below, right? Below is the mundane world where we live, but it could just as easily be said as above, right? And above, even though, like I said, it's not really directional like that, is the invisible world. Now, the language of this is as above, so below. But the actuality is that the invisible world is actually right inside the visible world. Like it's right under our noses. And we get all balled up when we think that there's this, you know, and I don't care what you think of heaven or whether you have a concept of heaven or not, that's completely up to you. But if we think of this empyrean or world like of heaven above the clouds, then we can be confused because the invisible world that we're talking about is the one that's right under our noses. And I want to show you some examples, right? So this actually is a mistake, but it's actually a mistake that will just as well illustrate my point. So on the left is the mathematical relationship between the seeds inside of a sunflower, right? And on the right, there is this forest floor, right? And in my original slide, instead of my forest floor, which I'm going to show you in the next slide, it's actually some Romanesque, which is that kind of broccoli. It's kind of like halfway between broccoli and cauliflower, and it has exactly the same spirals in it, right? So and this symbol that's in between them is approximately equal to. That's a mathematical symbol that means is approximately equal to. So this is just as true of the spirals of the sunflower as it is to, if you look at the leaves on a fern, the way that they're self-similar to each other, or the leaves on a tree, or the way that moss grows, or the branches on a tree. It's all fractal in the same way. So let me tell you a little bit more about how correspondences work. And then I'm going to give you some specific examples of correspondences, because the best examples that we have of correspondences are found in the tarot. Now, I'm going to just preface this by saying I didn't actually realize this until I started talking to a whole bunch of people that had nothing, that were business coaches and business people who had no idea about the tarot. And they said, well, I think the tarot might be this kind of scary thing that is like on the verge of evil. And I'm like, oh dear, that's really unfortunate, because the tarot is actually something that if you have a deck of tarot cards on a desert island, you can actually learn everything that you need to learn about how to live and be in society. But it's a collection of archetypes, and archetypes are bigger than us. And I'm going to illustrate that in the next few slides. So let's just say that we have these archetypes, and I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty of the tarot right now, but let's just say that there is a subset of the tarot deck of 78 cards is a set of 22 cards that represent archetypes. And archetypes are bigger than human experience. And I'm going to try and illustrate how they are and what the correspondences that we might come up with how they can benefit us in just a moment. So let's first look at the Empress card on the left. Now this is the Empress card from the Sage Tarot deck, which is my tarot deck. I spent 7 years creating it. Ouch. Somebody said I couldn't spend 7 years doing anything, and I don't know, I can't tell you why I was able to spend 7 years creating this, but I did. I did it. And I had to understand the cards that I was creating and understand the correspondences. The Empress is a really interesting one because the Empress is represented, you know, some of the correspondences are obvious inside the card itself. So the goddess that we're looking at is the goddess Artemis, and this was inspired by a Roman bas-relief on a frieze that had, you know, Artemis holding these snakes and these ears of wheat, these sheaves of wheat. And you can tell a few things from the card just by looking at the card, that she's pregnant, right? She has this sort of pregnant belly, and she has these 12 stars over her head, and she's got a sort of crescent moon underneath her foot. And she's got this wand with a lotus on the top of it over one knee. And then to her right and our left is a shield that has a dove on it, you know, or a bird of some kind, right? We think it's a dove. So those are things that actually all mean something, right? So what does being pregnant mean? You know, it means that she's the archetype in which reproduction occurs. And if you look at the is approximately equal to, you could easily say that the Empress was approximately equal to this forest that we saw in the previous card, right? So we've got this beautiful forest, and if we see the energy of the Empress, you know, she's holding the sheaves of wheat, and there's corn underneath, and there's greenery and trees in the background and roses. You can go, oh yeah, she's about that. She's about that. But then let's take a little bit deeper look, right? So those 12 stars over her head could easily represent the 12 signs of the zodiac, which would represent the 12 months of the year. So we have on the right-hand side of the card the 4 seasons. So yeah, here's an opportunity for us to like look at the Empress as representing the 4 seasons. So not only is it the crush and press of all living things, you know, that sort of boundless growth of nature, but it's the passage of time, it's the seasons, it's the burgeoning in spring and the fullness of summer and the dissolution of fall and the harvest of fall, you know, where you're bringing in the fruits of the year, and then you have the barrenness of winter. That's all contained in the Empress too, right? And you can begin to see that she's already teaching us lessons, right? Just by the existence of this card, if we know where to look, we're getting lessons about the way that the seasons operate. We're getting lessons about harvest and about transformation, which is what the snakes represent, right? I'm not even going to go into all of these, but I just want to give you an idea of the richness of a single card and what it can mean to your life and your business. So if we take this into our lives or our businesses, then we can say, okay, well, what is the lesson of the 4 seasons to my business? Does it mean that there is a natural cycle to my business? You know, that when I, you know, go get into a new market, or when I have a set of sales conversations, that perhaps there's a cycle right? And maybe there's a cycle to each customer, right? There's a harvest, and maybe that cycle is telling us that, even though the customer has gone, like our client or our customer has gone through an entire cycle, that, guess what happens after the winter? Spring comes again. So we've got an opportunity to cycle, and if we use the lessons of the Empress in our business, then we can begin to understand, hey, there's real benefit to studying this stuff. Then there's yet another correspondence with the Empress, and that is the correspondence of ecology, or how these systems work together, right? So there's the fractal self-similarity, then there's the time-based thing, and then there's the concept of ecology, which is how all these things fit together, and here we've got these, here it looks like a kind of New England thing. My system is giving me messages. It's a systems thing, right? We've got these fish, and we've got these crabs, and we've got these clams, and we've got nutrients pouring into the ocean, and sunshine, and the relationships of the clouds. And there are countless of these diagrams that I could have put in here, that are not just the cycle of the sea life at the edge of Puget Sound, for instance, but for instance could be the cycle of the moisture in clouds, right? So it's cycling through over and over again. And again, just another lesson from one of the 22 cards of the archetypes, one tiny lesson. And then finally, there is the lesson of compost, right? And this is the lesson of death, right? So you cannot be the queen of life without being the queen of death, right? Something that is alive has to die. So death is in the realm of the Empress. And so this is yet another lesson that we could take into our lives or into our business. Think of what that lesson might be, right? Death is an inevitable thing for all living things, right? It could mean that your business itself has a lifetime and that it's time for it to die. It could mean that a certain range of products has a finite lifetime, time to die. Could mean that an outmoded way of being, time to die, right? And what happens in death, and we can see this in compost, is that all this garbage that's up at the top, and greenery and food scraps and so forth gets moved into this really rich loam or compost that then feeds everything else, right? So we get trained when we are thinking about our businesses and our lives to think in these sort of one-dimensional single-shot things, like, okay, the business has to be successful, and it's got to turn profit hand over fist, and it has to be on a constant increase of profit. But when we think that, then we're missing the lessons of life, right? And when I said that a wizard lives life the way that life was meant to be lived, it's in recognition of the cycles of life, right? And remember, this is just one card of many, many cards in the deck that have different and specific lessons. You learn lessons in the archetypes about strength and beneficence or kindness. You learn lessons about ego and how important it is, and how tragic it is to ignore your ego. You learn lessons about the soul and what the soul might want, like what the invisible part of you might want, which could be shocking to you. You learn lessons about happiness, joy, right? All these are available to you as archetypes, right? And what I am really hoping for everyone on the call is that you actually begin to have an understanding of these archetypes and the correspondences that they have and the value that they can have to you in your business. So here is Da Vinci's Vitruvian Man, and it's like the most overused symbol in the world. And the reason I'm showing it here is because it's a reminder to me to tell you that the system that I'm teaching, the system that I've been studying for the last 30 years, is the same system that Leonardo da Vinci studied and that Michelangelo studied. And if you think that it's only a system that that the ancients studied and that it's of no use anymore, modern successful people like Madonna study this system. And as I found out very recently, the late, great David Bowie, who actually included references to the Tree of Life in his last video. So this system is alive and well, and truly successful people. Now, I'm not saying that this is a guarantee of success. I'm just saying that there is a record of highly successful people throughout time doing this system. And the system is not to be entered into as a series of tricks in order to get your venal needs met, right? This is a system of education to turn you into someone who is capable of doing the kinds of things that Michelangelo, Da Vinci, Madonna, and David Bowie could do. And it's not something that you just hop into and decide you're going to study it for a couple minutes, right? You need to put some time into it because it's, this is how you get rewarded, right? It's actually rare to find someone who's completely mastered this technology, right? So check if these things are true for you. Do you want to learn how to run your life and your business ecologically? Right? Let's actually go to the next slide, right? So this is just the little reminders for me to know what to talk about here. Do you want to learn how to run your business ecologically? To live your life the way it was meant to be lived, right? There's an ecology of all the pieces of your life, and when they're out of whack, and this is not about work-life balance. This is about the ecology of your life, right? So power, right? We all, there's this concept of power, and I said that the archetypes would show you strength and power, right? The strength card in the tarot deck is about power, the power of beneficence, the power of kindness, the power, not the power over, but the power of will in the framework of rapport, right? In that card, the woman has her hand in the mouth of a lion. She's just spreading the mouth open. That's not the kind of power that you can have if you are wielding a sword and trying to kill the lion. So if you want to activate this power of love, right, and that is the wizard's secret power, right? So take note of this and write it down. Love is the wizard's secret power. If you want to take power, the power of love and magnetism, and you want to create a connection more powerful than any fear that you might have, like this will overcome, or not overcome, because it's like it will just dissolve any fear that you might have. If you want to be empowered and so sure of your purpose that you can serve your world and your people without hesitation. And just as a personal note for me, once I decided that I was going to step in fully, and I don't know about you, but when Spirit gives me a message, I at first ignore it. And then I really, really try to ignore it. And then I really, 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 really try to ignore it until it bashes me over the head. And I've been, this is a personal story, I've been chewing the skin of my thumbs. I'm sure you've seen people who do this. It started out with their cuticles and they'll just gnaw at their cuticles. And then for me, it was like the cuticle skin extended around the entire thumb. And when I was working at a job that I was very ill suited for, which was, the mind-numbing grind of high tech, my thumbs look like ribbons of bloody flesh. But since I've decided to teach you wizards in the School for Wizards, my thumbs are completely clear. I can hold them out at a dinner table and go, look, they look like thumbs. So that's what happened to me when I said yes to wizardry and said yes to this system and said yes to what the world wanted me to do. You also will activate curiosity and creativity at a level that you can't believe. I mean, the way that Da Vinci ended up with all those designs of machines that were like way ahead of his time, those all came out of curiosity. And there's a way to step into curiosity with this material, right? If you want to be able to navigate the terrain of the invisible world to get what you want in this one, right? As above, so below. I want you to get that the wisdom that you need is already there, right? The wisdom already exists for you to manifest whatever you want. It has existed for thousands of years. And here's the tragedy. The tragedy is that about 350 to 400 years ago, at the age of so-called enlightenment, the new god that was worshipped was the god of science. And I'm not even going to go into the different scientific publications that have been written by scientists that prove this. But scientific theories are just theories. And it can be illustrated by even the theories of physics, that the paradigms of those fall through. The floor falls through. The floor fell through Newtonian physics. The floor fell through the laws of relativity into quantum physics. Now, the rules of Newtonian physics and relativity still work. They still work within their own system, but we got a different view. And so the bottom fell out of that. The wisdom that we're talking about is wisdom that was born of generation after generation after generation of people understanding and noticing the subtle things that they did, both with their minds and with their bodies, and by creating models and the correspondences that they studied. And they noticed that these things worked, and they recorded that. And it wasn't just like, okay, we're going to just do this in an afternoon or even a lifetime. It was lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, generation after generation. And all of that got thrown out when we began to worship science. So what I'm saying is, like, let's keep science. Science is useful. But let's also not throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? It's easy in this world of science to pretend that you're powerless, that you have no magical power. But what is the eventual cost of living like that, right? I want you to live life the way it was meant to be lived and to activate love, to activate connection, right? This is the picture of the boy who is pretending to be powerless, right? I'll tell you another personal story, right? This is the shh, right? In the past, I was very reluctant to teach magic because I thought people would think I was a weirdo. Little did I know that they already thought I was a weirdo and that it was no big surprise to anyone, right? I'm the first to admit it, but the last one to know, as Paul Simon says. And here's what would happen inside me. Part of me would go, you can't do that. People aren't interested in this invisible world. Like, no one is going to believe you. And then another voice, like, this is the crazy part, right? Then another voice would come out of the blue and say, this stuff works. Why aren't you teaching it? You know, and then I would talk back to the voice, right? And I would say, can't you see I'm busy? I've got a life. I've got things to do, right? You know, thinking that the little piddly things that I was doing were more important than this. But apparently, and I guess this shouldn't be a surprise to anyone but me, spirit is stronger than me. So I finally said yes. And what I said yes to was the impossible paradox of my life, right? So these are lovely paradoxes here. The round dice, you know, how do you know what number they're actually on? The what we call the ever up staircase, you know, which if you follow that thing on the upper left-hand corner around, you'll see that it's kind of impossible to constantly be going up, but that's the way it looks. And then you have in my adjustment card, which is one of the 22 archetype cards in the Sage Tarot deck, you have this figure that's in the sort of lower left-hand side of the card, this thing that has 2 things on the bottom, but 3 on the top. It's like an impossibility. It's a paradox, right? It's not possible for that thing to exist, and yet it does, right? So I believe that we are called to bigger and bigger paradoxes, right? And we're also pulled back into this, what we call, you know, I like to call, thank you, J.K. Rowling, the Muggle world, right? The Muggle world of constant ordinariness, right? And these rules and laws and practices and ways of living that I've been telling you about have actually been laid out for thousands of years, right? The keys to wizardry and magic are buried in plain sight. They're actually right in front of our faces. They don't even have to be dug up from some moldy old crypt. But they're only available to those who are open to them and for those who have eyes to see and ears to hear. And if you don't want to see or hear, then don't do magic, right? Don't do magic with me, and don't do it with anyone else, and just pretend you never heard it, right? Because the magical world is not for you if you're not interested in it, right? You can put some principles of magic into the world right now. I want to just show you a couple of pairs and talk to you a little bit more about a couple of more different kinds of correspondences. I'm going to do this really quick because we've only got about 5 minutes left to go. I want to make sure that we have time for questions. So here's the Fool. There's a color, there's a planet that it's associated with, there's a part of the self, there's an attribute, which is the breath of life or spirit. There are all these elements that mean things. There's a musical note, there's a number, there's a Hebrew letter, and meaning ox, right? Then we've got the world. Colors, blue, black, planet is Saturn, attribute is dominion and slavery. How about that? Like, with a deck of tarot cards, you can find out everything you need about society, right? Dominion and slavery is right here in this card, right? There's a completely different set of elements in this card that all mean something. Musical note is A. Number is 21. Hebrew letter is Tav, meaning cross or mark. So So with these cards, we have this like amazing world that we can open up. Now I'm gonna invite you, if you want to know more about this world, and you want to know more especially about what I call the keystone program in the School for Wizards. Is called the Path of Initiation, and it's something that you don't have to be physically located in a specific place to do. It's actually something that you can do with a group of people. A cohort starts in July, and another one starts in January, and the July one is starting to fill up right now. And if you're curious about that, or you're just curious about how the magical world can work better for you, then I invite you to go here for a free strategy session from me. It's www, and I don't think even that's important. You just go to theschoolforwizards.com, path-of-initiation. theschoolforwizards.com/path-of-initiation. And I hope that this has been informative to you about correspondences, and that you learned a little bit about how correspondences can actually be useful to you in your life and in your business. And what I'm now going to do is stop sharing my screen so that you can see my face. There we go. Hi, everyone. And now I can see the chat. Yay. Okay. Now, if you have questions, you can ask them in the chat window, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. Welcome, Marina. Welcome, Tyler. Welcome, Julia. I'm so happy that you're here. I know a bunch more of you have signed up and are probably going to watch this on the replay. And if you have questions, then you can ask them now. Okay, maybe I just preached too much. It's really good to have you all here. And if there are questions, you can always, oh, okay, where's the School of Wizards and what do you got to do to attend? Okay, so the School for Wizards, the campus to the School for Wizards is in various locations in California right now. So we have several places that we meet in Northern California, including Marin County and Davenport, California, and then some places that we meet in San Diego County in Southern California. And we're having an upcoming live meeting in very near Landers, California, where the Integratron is, and that's an event that I haven't told you about, but that will be that if you're signed up for the School for Wizards, you'll see. I'll tell you the address again is theschoolforwizards.com/path-of-initiation, path of initiation separated by dashes. And in order to attend the school, you just need to have your session with me where I tell you a little bit more about the school, and then you can see if the school's right for you and see if you're right for the school. I'm super excited about teaching as many people as I possibly can about magic, because what I want my legacy to be on this planet is that there is more magic in the world, and that people are actually using magic, people are actually using magic to get what they want, to increase the probability of a certain thing happening, you know, based on what they desire. So, okay. All right. Any more questions? I am super happy that that I got to spend this time with you today. I'm really, really pleased and happy that you were here. And please take advantage of the free strategy session. It's like a half an hour with me. We get to discuss the School for Wizards and specifically you. And more than likely, I will turn over some tarot cards for you to help determine what what the answers to some of your questions and problems are. Yes, I have heard of the book Real Magic, written by Bonewits. I have actually a diagram that I sometimes show that's Bonewits' World of Magic, and it's really pretty incredible. So, so thank you for mentioning that. The system of learning, I'll just spend a few minutes for Sandra, who is curious about the system of learning. So the way that the path of initiation works is that you study with me for a year, and we meet twice a month on Zoom. So we see each other's faces. We develop an actual community with each other, and there are a series of optional events that you do also during the year. We have currently 4 events. In the fall, there is the Power of Magic, which is kind of the big event that is the overview of magic. And that's the event in which the people that have been in the school for a year get to initiate into either wands or cups or swords or plates, which are the 4 suites of the tarot. And when you study with me for a year, we study each month a new set of cards. So and we do it the way that it was set up in the Hall of Initiation in ancient Egypt. So on the one side you have 0 to 11, and on the other side you have 21 to 12, and you walk down. 0 to 10, and then 11 to 21, and you walk down the Hall of Initiation in this series of meditations that we do, and people have the most amazing experiences having a one-on-one direct experience with these archetypes. And we share those, and then each month you have also an initiation that you need to perform or do in order to be able to graduate from the year of the School for Wizards. And we just got off of a 5-day vision quest that Marina, who is on the call, or was on the call, was one of our chefs for. So we always have super delicious food at our events, and I can explain all this in even greater detail if you want to go to the schoolforwizards.com path-of-initiation. Thank you everyone. It looks like that's about the questions that we have. If there are any more, I'll be happy to stay on and answer them. But otherwise, 2 weeks, we get another School for Wizards webinar that is on a different topic. So today's topic was correspondences. Next time we are going to do the topic of spells. And spells are very interesting, and you might be very fascinated that you're already doing spells. You're already doing them. So stay tuned for that. And for now, be well, and remember, all is well. Thanks for being here.